Have you ever wondered how Cain, one of the first sons of Adam and Eve, could have found a wife if they were the only humans on earth? Or how it's possible that Cain founded a city and had descendants? These questions have puzzled believers and scholars of the Bible for centuries. In this video, we will delve into the hidden mysteries of the first generations of humanity, revealing truths you may have never considered. What does the Bible really tell us about the expansion of mankind? Are there secrets that have gone unnoticed? Join us on this fascinating journey of discovery as we unravel the enigma behind Cain's life. Stay until the end to find answers that might change your perspective. From the very beginning of the Bible, Cain emerges as a central figure in the narratives, being introduced as the firstborn of Adam and Eve, marking the early stages of humanity. His relationship with Abel, his younger brother, becomes pivotal in the episode of the sacrifice to God. In an act of devotion, both brothers present their offerings to God, but divine acceptance falls exclusively upon Abel's offerings, leaving those of Cain rejected. The reason for God's refusal remains mysterious, sparking various interpretations throughout the centuries. Some speculate about the nature of the offerings, while others suggest a possible negative attitude in Cain's heart as the determining factor. The rejection stirs growing bitterness in Cain, culminating in the first recorded human tragedy in the Bible. Driven by jealousy and anger, Cain commits the terrible act of fratricide, taking Abel's life. This event, beyond being the first manifestation of human frailty and the gravity of sin, resonates through the pages of history, leaving an indelible mark on the biblical narrative as a warning about the consequences of human choices. God responds to Cain with severe punishment. Divine wrath is expressed by cursing Cain and marking him, making him a visible sign of his transgression. Although this mark is not clearly described in the Bible, it symbolizes separation and the burden of sin that Cain would carry with him. God's punishment extends beyond physical curse. It encompasses psychological and emotional consequences. Cain is condemned to wander as a wanderer in solitude, distancing himself from the divine presence. This exile leaves him at the mercy of his own conscience, bearing the weight of his nefarious choice. Cain's loneliness, now distant from both God and human companionship, reflects the depth of the separation caused by sin. The solitary wanderer becomes a symbol of spiritual and emotional alienation, a direct consequence of his actions. The Bible recounts Cain's concern about the weight of his curse, fearing that others might kill him upon encountering him. In response to this apprehension, God places a mark on Cain, ensuring his protection against any mortal vengeance. This divine act not only preserves Cain's life, but also symbolizes God's mercy amid the consequences of his actions. Here arises the first question from the more skeptical minds. Who were these others that Cain so greatly feared? Weren't Cain and Abel the only children of Adam and Eve? Hold on, my young grasshopper. Further ahead, you will find the answers to these questions. So let's proceed. In chapter 4, verses 16 and 17, we discover that Cain, even as a wanderer, encounters a woman and establishes a marital relationship. From this union, a son named Enoch is born, marking the beginning of a new generation descending from Cain. Surprisingly, Cain not only survives divine punishment, but also establishes himself remarkably. He decides to build a city and names it in honor of his son, Enoch. The city becomes a testament to resilience and the human ability to forge a path forward, even in the face of the marks from the past. This choice reflects Cain's determination to create a legacy and a community, challenging the adversities of his wandering condition. However, it is at this point that inquiries begin to multiply. The biblical text omits explicit details about how and with whom Cain established his marital relationship. In verse 17, we find only the vague information that Cain knew his wife. In the enigmatic tale of Cain, the narrative leaves us with perplexing questions about his wife and the potential existence of other humans during that ancient time. Diverse interpretations have emerged, each striving to bridge the gaps in the biblical account and address the complexities surrounding human population growth. One unconventional perspective proposes the idea that God might have independently created additional humans apart from Adam and Eve's family. Advocates of this theory argue that for humanity to multiply rapidly, a significant population would be necessary, challenging the notion that it could solely stem from the direct descendants of Adam and Eve. This viewpoint attempts to reconcile the biblical narrative with archaeological and anthropological evidence indicating the existence of broader human communities in antiquity. It's important to note, however, that this interpretation is speculative and lacks explicit support in the biblical text. The more widely accepted theory suggests that Cain may have married a sister, drawing upon an understanding of cultural practices and the context of that era as described in the biblical narrative. The book of Genesis doesn't explicitly state that Adam and Eve had only Cain and Abel as children. The absence of detailed information leaves room for the possibility that Adam and Eve had additional offspring not specifically mentioned in the Bible. The core argument supporting this hypothesis revolves around the understanding that families during that era were considerably larger, and individuals enjoyed remarkably long lifespans. For instance, Cain, a figure in the biblical account, lived for hundreds of years. This extended longevity enhances the plausibility that Adam and Eve had a more extensive offspring, including sons and daughters, not explicitly highlighted in the sacred text. This interpretation gains significant reinforcement when we delve deeper into the biblical narrative. After the incident between Cain and Abel, the story unfolds further. In Genesis chapter 5 verse 4, we find a reference that strengthens the idea that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. The text explicitly mentions that Adam lived 800 years after the birth of Seth and had other sons and daughters. This passage explicitly highlights the existence of a broader offspring beyond Cain, Abel, and Seth. In that cultural and temporal context, the practice of sibling marriage was not only acceptable, but also considered necessary for the propagation of the human race. In the early stages of history, there were no explicit prohibitions against this form of union, and cultural circumstances and survival demands might have influenced this practice. The absence of evident restrictions is illustrated by various cases in the biblical narrative where characters married members of their own families. A notable example is the case of Abraham and Sarah, who were half-siblings. Isaac, Abraham's son, following the customs of the time, married Rebekah, who was his cousin. This union is remarkable not only for its cultural acceptance, but also for the divine blessing that accompanied it. The biblical account in Genesis 24 describes how Abraham, concerned about finding a suitable wife for his son Isaac, sends his servant to Padan Aram to seek a spouse among their relatives. The servant encounters Rebekah, a relative of Isaac, at the well, and she becomes the chosen one to be Isaac's wife. This story illustrates not only the cultural practice of marriage among relatives at that time, but also emphasizes the importance attributed to the continuity of the family lineage. Additionally, the narrative suggests a belief in divine guidance in these marital arrangements, evident in how Rebekah's choice was perceived as providential. Another classic example of marriage between family members occurs after the flood, according to the Bible. After the Great Deluge, Noah and his family, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were tasked with repopulating the earth. Given the scarcity of the population after the flood, Noah's sons had no other option but to marry among themselves, or even with their own sisters, to fulfill the divine mandate of multiplying and replenishing the earth. The Bible, in Genesis chapter 9, emphasizes Noah and his family's responsibility to repopulate the earth and restore humanity, fulfilling the divine purpose, justifying such unions from the perspective of that time. These examples underscore how, at different stages of biblical history, Marriage between family members was considered acceptable and even necessary for the continuity of the human lineage after extraordinary events. It's intriguing to observe that laws against marriage between relatives, like those established in the Mosaic Law, arose considerably later, approximately 2,500 years after the creation of Adam and Eve, marking a significant point in the evolution of marital practices. These laws were enacted as part of the covenant with Moses, reflecting the emerging need for regulations as humanity multiplied. The prohibition of incest outlined in the laws given to Moses can be understood as a divine act intended to protect humanity and prevent potential negative consequences resulting from intermarriage among relatives. As populations grew and diversified, the introduction of these laws aimed to preserve genetic health and avoid risks associated with endogamy. Divine regulation against marriage between relatives, as described in the Mosaic laws, unfolds in the book of Leviticus. These prohibitions, meticulously outlined in chapter 18, cover a comprehensive range of family relationships, including specific instructions against sexual relations with mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces, and other close relatives. The book of Leviticus, an integral part of the scriptures, represents a practical extension of the covenant established with Moses, demonstrating divine attention to detail in regulating family relationships. It's essential to note that interpretations are subject to significant variations and are often debated among different religious traditions and theological groups. However, it is even more crucial to highlight that, regardless of interpretative differences, there is the perspective that we should not question or doubt God. Respect for tradition and submission to divine will prevail as fundamental principles, sustaining the conviction that true understanding lies in the confident acceptance of God's word. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep exploring intriguing topics, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below with your questions or ideas on today's topic. Your participation is key to helping us grow and create more content together. Blessings to all. See you in the next video.